Hi, I'm Tim from the training department. This month we're talking about using targeted experiences as a development strategy. In our previous videos, we talked about the impact and definition of what a developmental experience is. We also talked about when it is or maybe isn't a great time to use that as a development strategy. If you haven't already, I'd encourage you to check those videos out first. For now, I'll assume you've already watched those, so let's imagine that you have a team member and together you've identified some new responsibilities or tasks or projects that you think will help that person develop some new skills. The way that you set up and manage this entire experience can make a big difference in whether it is a beneficial experience or not. So today we have 3 tips to help you make the most out of your developmental experiences. Let's take a look.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Our first tip is this. When first setting up the developmental experience, give a lot of vision and a lot of tools and resources. To use a road trip analogy, imagine the developmental assignment was to drive to New York. Providing a lot of vision is like being very specific about exactly where in New York you want your team member to end up and how long he or she has to get there. When we say give a lot of vision, we mean that as the leader in this situation, you don't want to give a checklist of to-dos or a task list that lays out every single part of the assignment in detail. That won't result in learning because everything that's required to succeed has already been laid out. Your goal here is to give a crystal clear vision for the end goal of what you want accomplished, some tips and tools to help, and then let your team member figure out how he or she will attack this challenge. Providing too much instruction would be like giving your team member the exact route to follow, including turn-by-turn instructions, when to change lanes, where to stop for gas, where to eat along the way, and so on. Remember that in a developmental experience, this is where the learning happens, when we're forced to figure out and learn as we go. So that's the first tip. Giving vision, tools, and resources, but not too much specific direction. So let's talk about tip number 2.
Our second tip has to do with the guidance and support that you give your team member throughout the experience. A great analogy is like being a personal trainer at the gym. You want to be there to help, educate, and support. But the goal is for your team member to do the heavy lifting, because again, that's where the growth happens.
If a personal trainer does too much of the lifting, the weight still goes up, but the benefit to the other person diminishes. Likewise, if the trainer isn't there or isn't paying attention, things can go pretty badly.
So taking this out of the abstract, what does this mean for you if you're a manager coaching somebody through a developmental experience? Well, just like a good spotter at the gym, you want to make sure that you're giving good focus and attention, maybe through a few more check-ins than you normally have.
Maybe you'll have a quick "how's the project going" conversation once or twice a week, especially as your team member is finding his or her footing. The right timing and the pacing of the check-ins might not be the same for every single developmental assignment, but keep in mind that your goal is to create time and opportunity to discuss challenges and questions and to assess progress. And just like a spotter who doesn't do too much of the lifting, avoid giving all the answers when you check in. Try asking more questions and letting your team member think through what the answers might be. Try asking questions like,
is there anything holding you up? What do you think you should try next? What is your instinct telling you? How can you find out more? What else do you need to know in order to make that decision? Have you ever had this come up before? What did you do about it? Is there anyone that you think you can ask for help?
Whatever it looks like for you, here's the key takeaway. Because this will be a new and presumably more challenging experience for your team member, more frequent check-ins about it will not only help ensure that the new task or assignment is a success, but will also provide a lot of coaching opportunities to reinforce the key learning.
Our third and final tip for maximizing the developmental value of the experience is to give your team member exposure to lots of good feedback.
Research shows that feedback is an absolutely critical piece of the learning experience when we're developing new skills. It's what helps us know whether certain methods or strategies are effective or not, and shows us where we need to keep up the good work, try something different, or stop what we're doing right away. Your frequent check-ins are a good opportunity to provide feedback of your own, but that's not the only kind of feedback that's helpful for your team member. Remember, feedback is just information that tells us how we're doing. So if you can find many different ways to give your team member exposure to other feedback, like residents' comments, reactions from other team members, reports, financials, etc., it's another great way to help your developing team member know what's working and what isn't. So there you have it, 3 tips to help you and your team member get the most from a developmental experience. Lots of vision up front to give your team member a good sense of the desired destination. Lots of checking in and support that allows your team member to do the heavy lifting in a safe, guided setting, and access to lots of information from you and from other sources that provides him or her with feedback to hone new skills that he or she is working on.
As a result of your check-in conversations this month, I hope you're already thinking about or even planning a developmental experience for one or more people on your team. Take these tips and make them part of that experience, and if you have tips of your own, share them in the comments below to help the other leaders in our company.
Now get out there and do something today to be an awesome leader for your team.